Sometimes the deepest betrayals wear a tuxedo and arrive late to your celebration. And sometimes, even the most radiant woman finds herself staring into a mirror, trying to believe that tonight, just maybe, love might find its way back. Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. Naomi Green stood before the full-length mirror, smoothing the crimson gown against her curves. The color complemented her rich chestnut skin perfectly, making her feel radiant. Despite the anxiety twisting in her stomach, tonight was special. Her 31st birthday and first wedding anniversary with Christopher. Celebrated together at the Halcyon Club's grand ballroom. Just perfect. She whispered, adjusting the silver necklace at her throat, her mother's necklace, the last gift before cancer took her 2 years ago. The mirror reflected a woman of undeniable beauty. Almond-shaped eyes, high cheekbones, and full lips painted a soft rose. Her natural curls were styled in an elegant updo, with carefully arranged tendrils framing her face. Her phone chimed with a message from the event planner, confirming everything was set up to her specifications. Naomi exhaled slowly, trying to release the tension that had been building for weeks. "He'll be there," she assured her reflection. He promised. Their first year of marriage had started like a fairy tale. Christopher Bellamy, with his charismatic smile and ambitious vision, had swept into her life and dazzled her with his attention when she was still mourning. Her mother's death. The handsome investment strategist had pursued her relentlessly after they met at a charity event showcasing her interior architecture work. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a wedding that, while not extravagant, had felt perfect to Naomi. The problems began 6 months ago when Christopher's firm took on several high-risk accounts and the pressure changed him. Late nights became the norm. When he was home, he was distracted and short-tempered. The warm glances and passionate evenings dwindled, replaced by clipped exchanges and separate bedtimes. Naomi told herself it was just a rough patch. All marriages had them. Tonight would change everything. Naomi had spent weeks planning the celebration to remind Christopher of what they once shared. She'd invited 100 guests, carefully mixing their friends, coworkers, and family. The menu featured Christopher's favorite dishes. The band knew his preferred songs. The entire evening celebrated not just their anniversary, but the promising life ahead. Most importantly, she had the watch. Naomi opened her jewelry box and removed a sleek black case. Inside, nestled in midnight velvet, was a limited edition Mortenson's timepiece with a sapphire-encrusted bezel. Christopher's dream watch. She had caught him admiring it months ago, his eyes lingering even as he joked about the outrageous price. It had cost Naomi her most treasured asset, the small plot of land in rural Virginia her mother had left her. The property meant far more than just dirt and trees. It was where she and her mother had picnicked every summer under a vast willow tree, where they'd laid out blankets to watch meteor showers and dream aloud. Where her mother had planned to build a retirement cottage, sketching plans Naomi later refined in her professional training. "I know you understand, Mama," Naomi whispered, touching the silver necklace. "You always said true love was worth any sacrifice." Her chest tightened as she recalled the day. She signed the sale papers. The developer had already marked the old willow for removal to make way for luxury homes. When she asked if they might preserve it, he laughed and called it just another tree. But that tree was where her mother's ashes were scattered, per her specific request, to remain in the place she loved most. Naomi shoved the painful memory aside. The sacrifice would be worth it if it brought back the man she had fallen in love with. Her doorbell rang, signaling the car service. With one final glance in the mirror, Naomi tucked the watch case into her clutch and headed out. The butterflies in her stomach were no longer from anxiety, but hope. The Halcyon Club's grand ballroom had been transformed under Naomi's meticulous direction. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in a warm glow. Ivory linens covered the tables, adorned with towering arrangements of crimson roses in silver vases. Candles cast intimate pools of light, and a string quartet played gently by the dance floor, which remained empty as guests mingled. During cocktail hour, Naomi stood near the entrance, greeting arrivals with a gracious smile that masked her growing concern. It had been 45 minutes, and Christopher had yet to appear. "The man of the hour still stuck at the office?" asked Talia, Naomi's best friend since their undergrad days, as she approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "Apparently," Naomi replied, taking a small sip. "He texted that he's wrapping up a meeting and will be here soon." Talia's look betrayed her skepticism, but she said nothing. "Happy birthday, girl, and happy anniversary. You've created something beautiful here." "Thank you." Naomi's gaze swept the room. Pride, for a brief moment, displaced worry. Everything was perfect, just waiting on her husband to complete the picture. As if summoned, a murmur at the entrance pulled their attention. Christopher had arrived, but Naomi's relief quickly faded into concern. His tie was crooked, his hair disheveled, and his gait was just unsteady enough to suggest he'd been drinking. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on Naomi. "There she is," he said loudly. "The birthday girl and anniversary wife." He approached her with none of his usual polish, planting a perfunctory kiss on her cheek, the scent of expensive bourbon unmistakable. "You made it," Naomi said softly, reaching up to adjust his tie. He recoiled. "Of course I made it. Wouldn't miss my own anniversary party, would I?" There was an edge in his voice that sent a chill down Naomi's spine. "Everyone's here," she said, trying to maintain composure. "Your partners from the firm, my design clients, even your mother made it in from Philadelphia." "Wonderful," Christopher replied flatly, grabbing a glass of champagne and knocking it back in one go. He grabbed a champagne flute and downed it in one swallow. "Shall we begin the festivities? Isn't there some kind of program for the evening?" Talia squeezed Naomi's arm supportively before drifting away, giving the couple space. Naomi took a deep breath, pushing her unease aside. This was their night. She wouldn't let Christopher's mood ruin it. "Dinner will be served soon," she explained. "I thought we might say a few words to our guests first, thank them for coming." "Perfect. I have quite a few words to say." Something in Christopher's tone made Naomi's skin prickle with unease. Before she could respond, he was striding toward the small stage where the quartet played, signaling for them to stop. Naomi followed, her heart pounding against her ribs. This wasn't the plan. They were supposed to speak together, share memories of their first year, but Christopher was already taking the microphone, tapping it twice to make sure it worked. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice echoing through the now hushed ballroom. "Thank you all for coming to this elaborate celebration." He gestured grandly at the decorations, a flicker of something like disdain crossing his face. Naomi stood at the edge of the stage, frozen as Christopher continued. "My wife went to extraordinary lengths to mark our first anniversary." He put a sharp emphasis on extraordinary, turning it into something accusatory. "Naomi has always been one for grand gestures, for appearances, for showing the world what a perfect couple we are." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. "Christopher," she whispered, stepping forward. "What are you doing?" He ignored her, his attention fixed on the now visibly uncomfortable guests. "The truth is, there's nothing to celebrate tonight. Our marriage has been a mistake from the beginning, a business arrangement that's outlived its usefulness." The room went deadly silent. Naomi felt as though she'd been plunged into ice water, her body numb with shock. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, lungs suddenly incapable of holding air. The faces in the crowd seemed to blur together, every whisper feeling like a dagger, every pair of eyes a witness to her unraveling. "You see," Christopher continued, his tone colder now, "I married Naomi because she had connections in the design world that helped my investment strategy. She married me because she thought I could give her the status and security she craved." He looked directly at Naomi now, his brown eyes devoid of emotion. "But I've realized no amount of expensive parties or desperate attempts to impress me can make this charade worth continuing." Naomi couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred as tears threatened, but she blinked them back fiercely, refusing to fall apart in front of a room full of stunned onlookers. "So in honor of our anniversary," Christopher reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, "I'm giving my wife what she truly deserves." He extended it toward her with a cruel smile. "Divorce papers. Naomi, consider yourself served." The envelope dropped to the stage between them. Naomi stared at it, unable to process the scale of the humiliation unfolding. Her clutch, containing the watch she had sacrificed her mother's land to buy, now felt unbearably heavy. Every ounce of meaning she had poured into this night, into this hope, shattered like crystal on marble. She was standing in the ruins of her last attempt to be seen, to be loved. "Did you really think a watch would fix everything?" Christopher asked, his voice now quieter, but still amplified by the microphone. "Did you think I wouldn't find out you sold that land your mother left you? The land with the tree where her ashes were scattered?" He shook his head with mock sympathy. "Pathetic, just like this marriage." At the mention of her mother's ashes, something inside Naomi shattered. The tears she'd held back spilled over. The silver necklace at her throat, her mother's, burned against her skin. The room spun as whispers erupted among the guests. Faces blurred together, pitying, shocked, some even entertained by her public humiliation. She took an unsteady step backward, nearly stumbling off the stage. "I suggest everyone enjoy the expensive dinner my soon-to-be ex-wife has provided," Christopher concluded, setting down the mic. "Consider it her parting gift to us all." He descended the stage without another glance at Naomi and headed for the exit. The silence left in his wake was deafening, broken only by the soft thud of Naomi's purse hitting the floor. The black watch case tumbled out across the polished wood. A sob escaped her as she sank to her knees, no longer able to maintain composure. The beautiful crimson dress pooled around her like spilled wine as she covered her face, shoulders trembling with grief and humiliation. She had designed every detail of this night to be a memory of joy. Now it would be the moment her world was raised in full view. Through the haze of her breakdown, Naomi became vaguely aware of movement nearby. Talia's voice sharp with protective fury, others stepping forward but hesitating, unsure how to respond. Then, unexpectedly, a gentle hand touched her shoulder. She looked up through tear-blurred vision at a face she didn't recognize. A tall man with kind hazel eyes and broad shoulders, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit. His expression held no pity, only quiet understanding that somehow pierced her shame. "May I?" he asked softly, offering her a pristine handkerchief. Naomi accepted it silently, pressing the soft fabric to her cheeks. The stranger knelt beside her, shielding her somewhat from the stares of the crowd. "My name is Caleb Monroe," he said, his voice a deep, calming baritone. "I was invited by a mutual friend. I've never witnessed such cruelty displayed so publicly." Naomi tried to speak, but another sob caught in her throat. Caleb's hand remained steady on her shoulder, an anchor in the storm. "What that man did was inexcusable," he continued, his voice calm, but fire burned in his eyes. "No one deserves to be treated that way, especially not someone who clearly poured their entire heart into this evening." Somehow his words broke through the fog of Naomi's shock. She drew a shaky breath, finally finding her voice. "I just wanted to save our marriage," she whispered, her fingers instinctively reaching for the necklace at her throat. "I gave up all I had left of her." "Some things aren't meant to be saved," Caleb replied, "and some people aren't worthy of the salvation offered to them." He reached down, picked up the watch case, and gently closed it before returning it to her hands. "Someone who would use your mother's memory as a weapon doesn't deserve any sacrifice." A flicker of personal pain crossed his face before his composure returned. Before Naomi could answer, a commotion near the ballroom doors drew their attention. Christopher had returned, his face flushed with fury as he stormed toward the stage. "Still performing for the crowd, Naomi?" he jeered. "Already found a shoulder to cry on?" Caleb rose to his full height, positioning himself squarely between Naomi and her husband. Two security guards flanked him, their postures firm and protective. "Tomorrow night. Your name was on the guest list from your work with their design committee last year. I hope you'll attend. The world deserves to see your light, even when you feel most in shadow." Naomi stared at the message, her heart unexpectedly racing. How had he gotten her number? How did he know about her museum committee work? The questions should have unsettled her, but instead, a strange flutter stirred inside, something she hadn't felt in months. Curiosity. Interest. The faintest flicker of anticipation. The gala was a glittering event. The museum's grand hall had been transformed into an enchanted forest, delicate light installations casting the illusion of stars above. Naomi had nearly canceled a dozen times, but Talia's insistence and her own stubborn refusal to let Christopher reduce her to a recluse had prevailed. She chose midnight blue over her usual bold hues, hoping to disappear into the crowd, but the simple column dress, with subtle silver beading along the neckline, only highlighted her elegant collarbones and the graceful line of her neck, drawing more attention than she intended. As she walked through the entry hall, every step felt like reclaiming a part of herself. Each heel click, a quiet defiance against the shadow of shame. For the first hour, she limited herself to polite greetings, positioning herself near a quiet alcove featuring Renaissance sculptures. She wasn't hiding, just observing, gathering strength. The Bernini is breathtaking, isn't it? The deep voice behind her sent a shiver down her spine. She turned to find Caleb Monroe, impeccable in a tailored tuxedo, though he was gazing not at the sculpture but at her. The way it captures vulnerability and strength in the same moment, Caleb continued, stepping beside her. Reminds me of someone I met recently. Naomi found her voice. Are we pretending this is a coincidence, Mr. Monroe? His smile was warm and genuine. Caleb, please. And no, not a coincidence. I hoped you would come. How did you get my number? She asked bluntly. Your friend Talia, he said easily. She was protective at first, but eventually decided I might be worthy of at least a text message. He studied her face carefully. Are you angry? Naomi considered it. No, she answered honestly. Just cautious. Men who make grand gestures tend to vanish when real life begins. A fair assessment, Caleb acknowledged, though I'd argue that men who value appearance over substance aren't men at all. A server passed with champagne. Caleb took 2 glasses and offered one to her. She accepted it with slight hesitation. I should apologize, he said, his expression sobering. My proposal that night, it was impulsive, not because I didn't mean it, but because it wasn't fair to you in that moment. Naomi felt heat rise in her cheeks. It was unexpected. I've followed your work for over a year, Caleb admitted. Your design for the community center. The way you created spaces that comforted without condescension, that healed through beauty without excess. I was meant to meet you at a fundraiser last month, he continued, but I got called overseas. Naomi remembered the event, an empty seat at her table. That was you, he nodded. When I saw you at your anniversary, I recognized you immediately. Then I watched you endure public cruelty with grace. His eyes softened with intensity. Some people collapse under pressure. Others reveal their true strength. You were luminous in your pain, Naomi. His words struck a place deeper than sympathy. They reached into the cavern of that night, where shame had tried to bury her, and instead illuminated the quiet power with which she had stood. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. No one had ever seen her that way. Not as a designer to be admired, not as a wife meant to complete someone's image, but as a woman whose inner strength emerged at her lowest moment. I don't know what to say to that, she admitted. You don't need to say anything. Caleb gestured toward the museum's rooftop garden. Would you walk with me? The city looks magical from up there. Against her better judgment, Naomi nodded. As they moved through the crowd, she noticed how Caleb greeted others with warm sincerity, but kept a respectful distance from her. He didn't touch her elbow or guide her with a hand on her back the way Christopher used to, subtle gestures of control disguised as affection. With Caleb, there was only space, offered, never imposed, and somehow, that made her feel safer than any forced closeness ever had. The rooftop garden was quieter. Only a few guests braved the evening chill. Twinkling lights wove through potted trees, and the city stretched before them like a tapestry of light and shadow. I grew up in foster care, Caleb said quietly as they reached the stone parapet. Moved around a lot, never quite belonged anywhere. I learned early how to recognize genuine souls. They were rare and precious. Naomi turned toward him, surprised by the candor. When I was 16, I met an architect who saw something in me no one else had, he continued. He mentored me, helped me apply to college, taught me how to transform not just spaces, but lives. His gaze drifted, caught in memory. He taught me that recognizing value in others isn't just kindness, it's wisdom. Is that what you were doing that night? Naomi asked. Recognizing value? Yes, Caleb answered simply. And no, he turned fully to face her. Naomi, I won't pretend my reaction to you was purely professional. There was something else, something I've never experienced before. From his inside jacket pocket, he drew a small box. Naomi's heart skipped. For a wild moment, she feared he might be pulling out another ring, but inside was a delicate silver compass on a chain. "My first real proposal," Caleb said softly, not offered in the heat of a moment, but with clarity. He held up the compass. "When I was a child, feeling lost was constant. The only thing I could count on was this, knowing north would always be north, even when I couldn't see the stars, even when everything else changed." He extended the box to her. "I'm not asking for marriage tonight. I'm asking for the chance to show you, not all men are like Christopher. Tomorrow night. Your name was on the guest list from your work with their design committee last year. I hope you'll attend. The world deserves to see your light, even when you feel most in shadow." Naomi stared at the message, her heart racing unexpectedly. How had he gotten her number? How did he know about her museum committee work? The questions should have alarmed her, but instead she felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in months. Curiosity, interest, the faintest spark of anticipation. The gala was a glittering affair. The museum's great hall had been transformed into an enchanted forest, delicate light installations casting the illusion of stars overhead. Naomi had nearly canceled a dozen times, but Talia's insistence and her own stubborn determination not to let Christopher reduce her to a recluse had won out. She wore midnight blue instead of her usual bold colors, hoping to blend into the background. But the simple column dress, with subtle silver beading along the neckline, only emphasized her elegant collarbones and the graceful curve of her neck, drawing more attention than she'd intended. For the first hour, she kept conversation to a minimum, offering polite greetings while positioning herself near a quiet alcove showcasing Renaissance sculptures. She wasn't exactly hiding, just observing, gathering strength. "The Bernini is breathtaking, isn't it?" The deep voice behind her sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. She turned to find Caleb Monroe, impeccable in a tailored tuxedo, regarding not the sculpture, but her. "The way it captures vulnerability and strength in the same moment," Caleb continued, stepping beside her. "It reminds me of someone I met recently." Naomi found her voice. "Are we pretending this is a coincidence, Mr. Monroe?" His smile was warm, genuine. "Caleb, please, and no, not a coincidence. I hoped you'd come." "How did you get my number?" she asked directly. "Your friend Talia. She was protective at first, but eventually decided I might be worthy of at least a text message." He studied her face carefully. "Are you angry?" Naomi considered the question. "No," she answered truthfully. "Just cautious. Men who make grand gestures tend to disappear when real life resumes." "A fair assessment based on your experience," Caleb acknowledged, "though I could argue that men who value appearance over substance aren't really men at all." A server passed with champagne. Caleb took 2 glasses, offering one to Naomi, who accepted it hesitantly. "I should apologize," he said, his expression growing more serious. "My proposal that night was impulsive, not because I didn't mean it, but because it wasn't fair to you in that moment." Naomi felt heat rise to her cheeks. "It was unexpected." "I've followed your work for over a year," Caleb admitted. "Your design for the community center, the way you created spaces that comforted without condescension, that healed through beauty without ostentation. I was supposed to meet you at a fundraiser last month," he said. "But business took me overseas." Naomi remembered the event, the empty seat at her table. "That was you?" He nodded. "When I saw you at your anniversary, I recognized you immediately. Then I watched you endure unimaginable cruelty with such dignity." He trailed off, his eyes intense. "Some people collapse under pressure. Others reveal their true strength. You were luminous in your pain, Naomi." The raw honesty in his voice made her breath catch. No one had ever seen her that way. Not as a designer whose work they admired, not as a wife who completed her husband's image, but as a woman whose character radiated through her darkest moment. "I don't know what to say to that," she admitted. "You don't need to say anything." Caleb gestured toward the museum's rooftop garden. "Would you walk with me? The city looks magical from up there." Against her better judgment, Naomi nodded. As they moved through the crowd, she noticed how Caleb greeted others with genuine warmth, but maintained a respectful distance from her. He didn't touch her elbow or rest his hand on her back as Christopher might have done to assert possession. The rooftop garden was quieter, with only a few guests braving the cool evening air. Twinkling lights wove through potted trees, and the city stretched out before them like a tapestry of light and shadow. "I grew up in foster care," Caleb said quietly, as they stood at the parapet. "Moved from home to home, never quite belonged anywhere. I learned to recognize genuine souls. They were rare and precious." Naomi turned to him, surprised by the personal confession. "When I was 16, he continued, I met an architect who saw something in me that no one else had bothered to look for. He mentored me, helped me apply to college, showed me how to transform spaces and lives." His gaze turned distant, remembering. "He taught me that recognizing value in others isn't just kindness, it's wisdom." "Is that what you were doing that night? Recognizing value?" Naomi asked. "Yes," Caleb said simply. "And no." He turned to face her fully. "Naomi, I won't pretend my reaction to you was purely intellectual admiration. There was something else, something I've never experienced before." From an inside pocket he withdrew a small box. Naomi's heart lurched, a wild part of her bracing for a ring. But when he opened it, she saw a delicate silver compass on a chain. "My first real proposal," Caleb said softly. "Not offered in the heat of the moment, but with intention." He held up the compass. "When I was lost as a child, my only constant was knowing that north would always be north. Even when I couldn't see the stars, even when everything else changed, that remained true." He extended the box toward her. "I'm not asking for marriage tonight. I'm asking for a chance to show you. Not all men are like Christopher. That love can be a compass, not a cage. That you deserve someone who sees your true worth and values it above all else." Naomi looked from the compass to Caleb's face, her heart racing. "I barely know you," she whispered. "Then know this," he said gently. "I will never rush you. I will never shame you. I will never make you feel less than the extraordinary woman you are." His voice softened. "And if all you can offer is friendship, I will treasure that gift and never demand more." The sincerity in his eyes made Naomi's carefully guarded walls tremble. After a moment's hesitation, she reached for the compass, her fingers brushing his as she lifted it from the box. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Like its owner," Caleb replied. When she looked up sharply, he smiled. "Too much?" Despite herself, Naomi laughed, the first genuine laugh since that terrible night. "Definitely too much." His answering smile was brilliant. "I'll work on my delivery." As he took the necklace and moved behind her to fasten it, Naomi felt his presence like a shield against the cool night air. The compass settled against her skin, its weight unfamiliar but not unwelcome. "Thank you," she said, turning to face him again. "Not just for this, for that night, for seeing me." Caleb's expression softened. "Naomi Green, I'd be honored if you'd join me for dinner next week." "Just dinner?" "Just conversation, a proper beginning." Naomi touched the compass at her throat, feeling something fragile stir in her chest. Not love, not yet, but perhaps its earliest form, hope. "Yes," she said simply. "I'd like that." Chapter 3: The Rescue. 3 weeks had passed since the museum gala, where Caleb had given Naomi the compass necklace. Since that night, Naomi had cautiously agreed to a proper first date, a quiet dinner at a small French restaurant, where Caleb impressed her with his knowledge of architecture and genuine curiosity about her design philosophy. She had expected awkward pauses, but found herself surprisingly at ease in his company. Their second meeting was an afternoon at a local art exhibition, where Caleb confessed his complete confusion about modern art, endearing himself with unexpected vulnerability. "I can design buildings, but I can't decipher a canvas of colored squares," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. That small moment of imperfection did more to earn Naomi's trust than any grand gesture. Their third encounter, a Sunday morning walk through the botanical gardens, revealed yet another layer. Caleb knew the Latin names of the plants, knowledge from a foster mother who had been a botanist. "The only one who actually cared," he explained quietly, hesitating before offering brief glimpses into foster homes where affection was rare or non-existent. Now, after a fourth meeting, dinner at his penthouse where he cooked for her. Impressively, aside from one burnt batch of dinner rolls, Naomi found herself reflecting on Caleb's slow, intentional approach to courting her. Unlike Christopher's whirlwind of charm and control, Caleb was building trust brick by brick, mindful of her still mending heart. Tonight, Naomi had stayed late at her studio, finalizing designs for a new community center project. The compass necklace Caleb had given her rested against her skin beneath her blouse. She wore it daily now, though she couldn't entirely explain why. Perhaps because it symbolized something she longed for: direction, clarity, a steady presence in the dark. The night air was brisk as she locked the studio door. Talia had offered her a ride home, but Naomi had declined. The walk would clear her mind from the tangle of emotions Caleb stirred in her. His patience both soothed and unnerved her. Was she reading too much into his calm, steady pursuit? Did his restraint come from respect, or just polite disinterest? Lost in thought, she was 3 blocks from her apartment when she sensed it, not heard it. Someone following her. Quickening her pace, Naomi clutched her portfolio tightly to her chest, heart pounding. Heavy footsteps echoed behind her. She broke into a run, only to collide with a solid figure who stepped out from between 2 parked cars. "Going somewhere, Mrs. Bellamy?" The man's face was unfamiliar, but his tone left no doubt. This was no random encounter. Or is it Miss Green again? Hard to keep track. Naomi stepped back, finding herself trapped. Another man had emerged from the shadows behind her. "What do you want?" she demanded. "Just a friendly conversation," said the second man, his smile anything but friendly. "About those assets you're claiming in the divorce. Mr. Bellamy thinks you might reconsider your position." Fear crystallized into fury. "He sent you to threaten me? That's low, even for Christopher." The first man shrugged. "He's a businessman. This is negotiation." He reached out, grabbing Naomi's wrist. "Let's talk somewhere more private." Naomi jerked away, her portfolio slipping to the ground, pages scattering in the breeze. "Get your hands off me." The second man stepped closer. "Don't make this difficult, lady. We're just delivering a message. Tonight could be worse. Next time." The threat hung in the air like ice. Naomi opened her mouth to scream when the sudden squeal of tires broke through the night. A sleek black car pulled to the curb, and Caleb Monroe stepped out. His normally warm eyes were now cold as steel. "I believe the lady asked you to step back," he said, voice calm and lethal. The men hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. "This is a private matter," the first one snapped. "Move along." Caleb's laugh was dry. "Naomi, are these men bothering you?" "They work for Christopher," she managed, relief washing over her. A shadow of danger flickered across Caleb's face. "Gentlemen," he said, voice low and deliberate, "I suggest you leave. Now." For a tense moment, Naomi thought they might listen. Then the first man reached into his jacket. A flash of metal caught the streetlight as he drew a knife. "The rich boy wants to play hero," he sneered. "Bad choice." What happened next unfolded with shocking speed. The man lunged, but Caleb moved with unexpected grace, deflecting the knife hand and delivering a precise strike that sent the attacker stumbling backward. The second man rushed him from behind, but Caleb spun, using the man's momentum to throw him off balance. Naomi watched in stunned silence as Caleb fought with the controlled precision of someone professionally trained. When the first attacker came at him again, Caleb redirected the knife, though not before the blade slashed across his shoulder, tearing through his suit jacket. Despite the injury, Caleb delivered a devastating combination that left both men groaning on the pavement. "Naomi," he said urgently. "My car, now." She didn't hesitate, rushing to the vehicle as Caleb scooped up her scattered designs with his uninjured arm. Once inside, he handed her the portfolio and started the engine, pulling away with controlled speed. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice tight. "No, I'm fine." "But you're bleeding," Naomi said, staring at the dark stain spreading across his shoulder. "We need to get you to a hospital." "No hospitals," Caleb said firmly. "Too many questions. My penthouse isn't far. I have supplies there." Despite her concern, Naomi nodded. The last thing she needed was a police report that might give Christopher more ammunition in their increasingly bitter divorce. Caleb's penthouse took up the top floor of a sleek high-rise overlooking the river. In any other moment, Naomi would have admired the clean architectural lines and thoughtful design, but now she followed him straight to the bathroom. He shrugged out of his ruined jacket and shirt with a grimace of pain. "First aid kit, under the sink," he directed, sitting on the edge of the marble tub. Naomi found it, surprisingly well stocked, and turned to find Caleb bare-chested before her. Despite the circumstances, she couldn't help but notice his athletic build, the defined muscles of his chest and abdomen, the smooth brown skin now marred by a 6-inch gash across his right shoulder. "It looks worse than it is," he assured her, seeing her expression. "Surface wound, but it needs cleaning." With trembling hands, Naomi dampened a cloth and gently began wiping away the blood. Caleb remained still, his only reaction a slight tightening around his eyes when she applied antiseptic. "How did you find me?" she asked, focusing on her task rather than their sudden physical closeness. "I was coming to your studio to surprise you," he admitted. "Saw you leaving. Thought I'd catch up. Then I noticed those men following you." Naomi's hands paused. "The way you fought. You've had training." A shadow crossed Caleb's face. "Foster care wasn't always in the safest neighborhoods. I learned to defend myself early. Later I studied martial arts formally." He hesitated, then added in a quieter voice, "I was 17 when I got this." He turned slightly, revealing a thin scar along his ribs. Last foster home. The father was an alcoholic with a temper. He went after his 8-year-old daughter one night. I intervened. The admission was matter of fact. The but carried layers of unspoken pain. Naomi's heart ached at the revelation. "What happened to the girl?" she asked softly, resuming her careful ministrations. "My mentor, the architect who helped me get into college, took her in. She's a pediatrician now." A small, genuine smile softened his features. "We still have dinner once a month." Naomi finished cleaning the wound in silence, absorbing everything he'd shared. Caleb wasn't just the man who had once proposed marriage in a moment of gallant impulse. He was someone who had known pain, who had protected others long before he knew her. "Thank you," she whispered, applying the bandage. "Not just for tonight, for telling me about your past." Caleb caught her hand, stopping her movements. "Naomi, look at me." She raised her eyes to his and found them intense, brimming with emotion. "I will never let anyone hurt you," he said, each word deliberate and full of conviction. "But I need you to know something. I'm not perfect. I have scars, both visible and hidden. I have a temper. I keep it tightly controlled. I sometimes work too much and sleep too little." The candid honesty startled her. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I don't want you to see me as some fairy tale rescuer," he said earnestly. "If there's ever going to be something real between us, it needs to be between two flawed, real people. Not a white knight and a damsel." Naomi stared at him, suddenly aware of how close they were. Her standing between his knees, his bare chest in front of her, her hands still caught in his. The honesty in his eyes moved her more than any grand romantic gesture ever could. Caleb drew a ragged breath, his gaze flickering to her lips before he deliberately let go of her hands and leaned back slightly. "You should finish with that bandage," he said, his voice rough with restrained emotion. "Then I'll take you home." Naomi nodded, understanding what had just happened. He had wanted to kiss her, wanted it badly, but he had chosen to respect her, to protect her heart, rather than take advantage of her vulnerability. As she carefully finished applying the bandage, Naomi felt something shift inside her. Caleb Monroe hadn't just fought for her safety tonight, he was fighting for her emotional healing too, even from his own desires. When she was done, her fingers lingered on the bandage. "What if I don't want to go home? Just yet?" she asked softly. Caleb's eyes met hers, searching. "Naomi, I don't want you to feel obligated because I helped you tonight." "It's not obligation," she said gently, reaching up to touch the compass that rested beneath her blouse. "It's choice. My choice." Slowly, deliberately, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a gentle kiss. The kiss. Caleb remained perfectly still for a heartbeat, then responded with exquisite tenderness, his hand rising to cradle her face as though she were made of the most precious porcelain. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," he confessed. "Even when I was a mess of tears and smeared makeup?" she asked with a small, unexpected smile. "Especially then," he replied seriously, "because even in your most broken moment, your spirit shone through." Naomi drew back slightly, studying his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the careful restraint in his touch. This man was nothing like Christopher, whose charm had masked calculation. Caleb's strength was tempered with gentleness, his confidence with humility. "I'm not ready for everything," she admitted quietly. I'm still sorting through the ruins of one relationship, but I'd like to see where this path leads. Caleb smiled, and for a moment she saw the boy he must have been before life taught him caution. Open, hopeful, unguarded. I'm not asking for everything tonight, he assured her. Just the chance to walk beside you wherever the path goes. I'd like that, Naomi whispered, her hand finding his again. I'm beginning to think, she added softly, that sometimes the compass points exactly where you need to go. Naomi traced her fingers over the embossed letterhead of the legal document, hardly believing what she was reading. Her newest client, a prestigious hospitality group planning a boutique hotel, had abruptly terminated her contract. The carefully worded letter couldn't hide the truth. Christopher's influence had poisoned another professional relationship. That's the third one this month, she murmured, sliding the letter into a growing file of similar rejections. Tears of frustration pricked at her eyes. Her design business wasn't just her livelihood, it was her personal renaissance. After years of diminishing in her marriage, each project she lost felt like Christopher reaching from the past to strangle her future. Her phone chimed with a message from Caleb. Lunch today? I miss your smile. Despite the frustration, warmth bloomed in her chest. Their relationship had deepened naturally since that first kiss in his penthouse 2 weeks ago. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, just a steady, growing connection. Caleb had become her sanctuary in a storm of Christopher's making. Another canceled contract. Not feeling very smiley today, she replied. His response came immediately. My office, 10 a.m. Bring your portfolio. I have something to show you. Caleb's office occupied the top floor of a sleek glass tower downtown. Unlike Christopher's chrome and leather executive suite designed to intimidate, Caleb's space featured warm woods, living plants, and floor-to-ceiling windows that bathed the room in natural light. One wall displayed architectural models of his sustainable housing developments. He greeted her with a gentle kiss, his fingers briefly entwining with hers before leading her to a conference table where blueprints were spread out. What's this? Naomi asked, studying the plans. My newest project? Caleb replied, eyes bright with enthusiasm. A mixed-use development in the Riverside District, affordable housing, community spaces, retail, and a cultural center. Naomi examined the blueprints with professional interest, immediately noting the innovative use of space and sustainable elements typical of Caleb's work. It's remarkable, she said. The integration of green spaces is particularly inspired. It's miss something, Caleb said, watching her closely. Soul, warmth, the human element that transforms architecture into home. He paused. Your element, Naomi. She looked up, suddenly understanding. Are you offering me a job? A partnership, he corrected. Your design vision alongside my architectural framework. Equal collaboration, separate from our personal relationship. Naomi walked to the window, absorbing the implications. People will talk, she said. They'll say I'm only getting this opportunity because we're involved. Caleb joined her, careful not to crowd her space. Let them talk. The work will speak for itself. His voice softened. Besides, I've wanted to collaborate with you professionally since before I knew you personally. Your design for the community center sold me on your talent, long before I ever saw your face. Naomi turned to him, studying his expression. And if things between us change? The contract is structured to protect your professional interests, regardless of our personal relationship. He took her hand. Naomi, I would never use your heart to control your career. That's what Christopher is doing now, using your career to punish your heart. The truth of his words struck her deeply. Christopher was weaponizing her reputation because he knew how much it meant to her. In contrast, Caleb was offering a path forward that recognized her talents, independent of their growing feelings. I'd like to see the full proposal, she said finally, and I'll need my lawyer to review any contracts. Caleb's smile was radiant. Of course, I'd expect nothing less. As they bent over the blueprints together discussing possibilities, Naomi felt something she hadn't experienced since Christopher's betrayal: professional hope. Her mind raced with ideas for humanizing the spaces, making them both beautiful and functional for the families who would live there. This courtyard could become a community garden, she suggested, pointing to an open area. And these common spaces need to encourage interaction while still respecting privacy. Caleb watched her come alive, her hands moving expressively as she sketched concepts on tracing paper laid over his blueprints. This was the woman he'd admired from afar. Confident, passionate, visionary. "You're extraordinary when you create," he said softly. Naomi looked up, caught by the admiration in his eyes. Unlike Christopher, who had seen her design career only as a tool for networking, Caleb genuinely valued her creativity. Their lunch forgotten, they spent hours brainstorming. When Naomi finally checked the time, she was shocked to see it was nearly evening. "I had no idea it was so late," she said, gathering her things. "Time disappears when you're building dreams," Caleb said, helping Naomi organize the sketches she'd created. "Would you have dinner with me? There's a small Ethiopian place nearby I think you'd love." Before she could answer, her phone rang, her lawyer's number flashing on the screen. With an apologetic glance at Caleb, she answered. "Miss Green, I've just received notice that your ex-husband is filing a claim for the watch you purchased prior to your separation. His attorney is arguing it constitutes a marital asset due to its significant value." Naomi's hand tightened around the phone. The sapphire watch, the symbol of her greatest sacrifice and Christopher's cruelest rejection, was now being used as another weapon. "That's absurd," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I purchased it with funds from property I inherited before our marriage. Unfortunately, the timing of the purchase falls within the marital period. We can fight this, but prepare yourself for a battle." After ending the call, Naomi looked up to find Caleb watching her with concern. "Christopher?" he asked quietly. "He's claiming the watch as a marital asset." The absurdity suddenly struck her, and a sound between a laugh and a sob escaped her. "The watch he publicly rejected, the watch I bought by selling my mother's land." Caleb's expression darkened. "He doesn't want the watch, he wants to hurt you by taking something meaningful. It's not even about the watch anymore." "No," Naomi admitted, sinking into a chair. "It's what it represents. My willingness to sacrifice something precious for a man who never deserved it." She looked up at Caleb, vulnerability plain in her eyes. "I feel like such a fool." In 3 strides, Caleb was kneeling in front of her, taking both her hands. "Listen to me. Loving deeply is never foolish, even when the recipient proves unworthy. Your capacity for devotion is a strength, not a weakness." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I understood what that watch meant the moment I saw it fall from your purse that night. I know what it cost you, not just financially, but emotionally." Naomi looked down at their joined hands, her slender fingers entwined with his stronger ones. "I'm afraid," she confessed. "Not of Christopher, but of trusting my own judgment again." To her surprise, Caleb's eyes filled with vulnerability of his own. "Do you think I'm never afraid?" he asked softly. "I'm terrified. Of failing you. Of not being worthy of the trust you're slowly giving me." The admission stunned her. This powerful man, who seemed so assured, so capable, was sharing his own fears. It was, perhaps, the most intimate moment they had shared, more revealing than their kiss, more connecting than their collaboration. "Why would you be afraid?" she asked. "Because I've never had this," Caleb replied simply, gently squeezing her hands. "My success came from building things, Naomi. But relationships? Those are harder. My childhood taught me how easily love can be withheld. My adult life didn't offer many chances for real connection." He raised her hands to his lips and kissed them softly. "Trust isn't given all at once. It's built day by day, action by action." His eyes held hers. "I don't ask for blind faith, Naomi, just the chance to earn your trust, with every day that passes." In that moment, as the city lights began to twinkle against the evening sky, Naomi recognized something profound in Caleb's honesty. Not weakness, but the courage to be vulnerable with her. He wasn't offering to save her. He was offering to grow alongside her, risking his own heart in the process. "Ethiopian food sounds perfect," she said, a genuine smile finally breaking through her earlier frustration. "And yes, I'll consider your partnership proposal. Both the professional one and," she gestured between them, "whatever this is becoming." Caleb's answering smile was tender as he helped her to her feet. "This," he said, brushing a soft kiss across her lips, "is the foundation of something extraordinary, and like all my buildings, I intend to make it strong enough to withstand any storm." As they walked together toward the elevators, Naomi felt a new sense of balance between them. Caleb's willingness to show his own fears had bridged the final distance between them, allowing her to see him not as a perfect savior, but as a man offering an authentic partnership. In every sense. "You know," she said as they waited for the elevator, "I think my favorite part of designing spaces is finding the right balance between strength and comfort, between beauty and function." Caleb looked down at her, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words. "The best designs always hold those tensions in perfect equilibrium," he agreed, his arms slipping naturally around her waist. "Rather like relationships." The elevator chimed, its doors opening to reveal their reflection. Two people standing side by side, neither leaning on the other, yet clearly bound by something stronger than proximity. "I think we might create something beautiful together," Naomi said softly as they stepped inside. Caleb's eyes met hers in the mirrored reflection. "In every sense," he promised, "in every way." "Time disappears when you're building dreams," Caleb said, helping Naomi organize the sketches she'd created. "Would you have dinner with me? There's a small Ethiopian place nearby I think you'd love." Before she could answer, her phone rang. Her lawyer's name flashed on the screen. With an apologetic glance at Caleb, she answered. "Miss Green, we've received a settlement offer," her attorney began. "Mr. Bellamy is willing to drop the claim on the watch in exchange for your share of the Lincoln Avenue property." Naomi's stomach dropped. The Lincoln Avenue building had been their first joint investment, a modest commercial property that had appreciated significantly. Her portion would more than cover the cost of the watch, effectively making her pay twice for a gift Christopher had publicly rejected. "He knows exactly what he's doing," she said bitterly, "making me choose between financial security and principle." After ending the call, she explained the situation to Caleb, whose expression darkened. "What will you do?" he asked gently, careful not to impose his opinion. Naomi gazed out at the city skyline. "Part of me wants to fight on principle alone, but another part just wants this connection to him severed at any cost." Caleb stepped closer, gently tilting her chin until their eyes met. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you, but remember this. Objects hold only the power we give them." His words struck her with unexpected clarity. The watch, her mother's land, the Lincoln Avenue property, they were all just things. What mattered was freeing herself from Christopher's emotional manipulation. "I'm going to accept the settlement," she decided. "Not because he's won, but because I refuse to let him occupy any more space in my life." Caleb's smile was filled with quiet pride. "That's my brave Naomi." As twilight fell over the city, they walked the perimeter of the rooftop garden, discussing their vision for the grand opening. Despite her curiosity about Caleb's surprise, Naomi found herself grounded in the moment, grateful for how far she had come. The next 8 weeks flew by in a whirlwind of planning and construction. Naomi rarely saw Caleb outside of project meetings. He was mysteriously preoccupied with what he only described as preparations. The settlement with Christopher was finalized, and while it stung financially, the emotional relief was invaluable. The night of the grand opening arrived on a crisp, early autumn evening. The development, named Horizon Haven as a subtle nod to rebirth, stood complete in its understated brilliance. Warm lighting bathed the architecture, while Naomi's interior design made each space feel both refined and deeply human. "You look breathtaking," Talia said, helping Naomi with final touches in a private room set aside for them. Naomi smoothed the silk of her gown, a deep sapphire that perfectly complemented her skin tone. "I'm nervous, and I don't even know why. I've presented designs before." "Maybe because this one matters more," Talia replied, adjusting the compass necklace Naomi still wore every day, not just professionally. Before Naomi could respond, there was a knock at the door. A young woman entered, holding a small box wrapped in silver ribbon. "Miss Green, Mr. Monroe asked me to deliver this to you before you join the guests." Alone again, Naomi opened the box carefully. On top of the tissue paper sat a folded note in Caleb's handwriting. "Naomi, tonight we celebrate not just a building risen from empty space, but a woman risen from heartbreak, stronger and more beautiful than before. Before you join me, I ask you to follow the path marked with silver ribbons. Take your time. Each stop has meaning. Yours in all ways, Caleb." Intrigued, Naomi followed the ribbon tied to the doorknob. It led her down a quiet corridor where photographs lined the walls, images of the project's progress. But among them were more intimate photos. Naomi laughing during a site visit, bent over blueprints, standing beside Caleb as the first foundation walls went up. The path continued into the central courtyard, now transformed into a striking art installation. At its center stood a sculptural compass rose, inlaid in stone. Pathways stretched in 8 directions, each lined with small displays, architectural models, fabric swatches from her designs, the bloodied handkerchief Caleb had offered her that first terrible night. Their story rendered in memory and art. At the northern point of the compass stood Caleb, radiant in a tailored suit. His eyes found hers across the courtyard. Only then did Naomi notice that guests were present, standing silently along the perimeter, watching. She walked the path toward him, breath-catching. When she reached him, Caleb took both her hands, his expression open and vulnerable. "Naomi Green," he began, his voice steady though thick with emotion. "Twice before, I've asked for your hand, each time knowing you weren't ready. First in a moment of protective instinct, then as a promise of patient devotion." Naomi's heart pounded. She knew what was coming. "This third time," Caleb continued, gesturing around them, "I ask with the certainty that comes from building something real, together. This compass rose symbolizes our journey. How we found direction together when both our lives were in chaos." Caleb released one of Naomi's hands to withdraw a small box from his jacket pocket. "You once sacrificed your heritage for a man who couldn't recognize its value," he said softly. "I can never replace what was lost, but I offer instead a future built on mutual respect and profound love." Kneeling before her, Caleb opened the box to reveal not a traditional diamond ring, but a band of warm gold inset with a small piece of polished wood. "This ring contains wood from the land your mother left you," he explained, his voice rough with emotion. "I tracked down the developer who purchased it and asked for a small piece of the willow tree that stood there." Naomi gasped, tears welling in her eyes. "How did you know about the tree?" "You mentioned it once, how you and your mother would picnic under it in the summers," he replied. "Some things are worth preserving, even as we build new dreams." Taking her left hand, Caleb looked up at her with unwavering certainty. "Naomi Green, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me as equal partners, in work and in love? I promise to cherish your strength as much as your vulnerability, and to support your independence while offering my heart's complete devotion." In that moment, surrounded by the physical manifestation of everything they had built, Naomi felt the final pieces of her heart's protective wall crumble. Caleb had not simply said he loved her. He had shown her, time and again, through both grand and quiet acts. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, for all to hear, "Yes, Caleb, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to take her into his arms, the gathered guests erupted in applause. Their kiss was tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would create together. Later, as they mingled with guests to celebrate both the project's completion and their engagement, Caleb kept Naomi close by his side. His gaze rarely straying from her face. "Was this your plan all along?" she asked, her fingers brushing the ring that felt more precious than any diamond. "To propose here tonight?" Caleb's smile was both triumphant and tender. "From the moment you agreed to this partnership, I hoped it would lead to a more permanent one." He kissed her temple. "Third time's the charm, they say." Naomi leaned into him, finally at peace with both her past and her future. "The compass always pointed to you," she said softly. "I just needed time to trust its direction." Chapter 6: New Beginnings. The transformation in Naomi's life over the 2 months since accepting Caleb's proposal amazed even her closest friends. The woman who once crumbled under public humiliation now moved through the world with quiet confidence, her hand often brushing the wooden ring that connected her past with her future. "I barely recognize you," Talia said one afternoon as they reviewed wedding plans in Naomi's newly renovated design studio, a space Caleb had helped her secure after Christopher's vindictive actions had forced her to leave her former office. "And I mean that in the best possible way." Naomi smiled, glancing at the mood board they'd created for the intimate spring ceremony. "I barely recognize myself sometimes," she admitted. "It's not just Caleb, though he's a big part of it. It's remembering who I was always meant to be." The woman who had married Christopher was still grieving her mother, seeking security and validation in a relationship that gave neither. The woman who would marry Caleb had rediscovered her strength first and chosen a partner who amplified it, not diminished it. Her phone chimed. Meeting finished early. Dinner at Bissett's? I have news. Go, Talia urged, seeing Naomi's expression brighten. The flowers can wait. Bissett's was their place, the cozy French restaurant where they'd had their first real date after the museum gala. The owner greeted Naomi by name and led her to their private corner table where Caleb was already waiting, his face lighting up when he saw her. Have I told you today how beautiful you are? He asked, rising to kiss her before holding her chair. Only twice, Naomi replied, smiling warmly. Caleb's eyes danced as he reached for her hand across the table. The Foundation Board approved our proposal for the Design Scholarship Program. Starting next fall, 10 students from underserved communities will receive full funding for architecture and design education, with guaranteed internships at your studio or my firm. Naomi squeezed his hand, emotion tightening her throat. The scholarship had been her idea, a way to open doors for talented youth without privilege. Caleb had embraced it immediately and expanded the concept even further. That's wonderful, she said. Those students' lives will change, completely. Like mine did, Caleb said. When my mentor saw something in me, it's our turn to extend the ladder. As they shared wine and their favorite dishes, Naomi marveled at how seamlessly their lives had merged. Caleb introduced her to philanthropic circles where her ideas reshaped community initiatives. She brought him into intimate creative spaces where his strategic mind flourished. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. After dinner, they strolled along the riverfront, Caleb's arm wrapped around her shoulders against the crisp breeze. I had a strange call today, he said, tone carefully neutral, from Christopher's attorney. Naomi tensed. Though the divorce was finalized, Christopher's shadow still lingered through petty intrusions. What did he want? Apparently, Christopher's company is struggling. He's looking for investors. Caleb's face remained unreadable. His lawyer suggested I might be interested, given my connection to his former wife. Naomi stopped walking, turning to face him. That's unbelievably presumptuous. It's desperate, Caleb said gently. His investors are pulling out after that expose. The market sees what's happening. A complicated wave washed through Naomi, not satisfaction, but perhaps some justice. Christopher's true character was finally being revealed. What did you tell them? That I base investments on sound business, not personal connections. Caleb's thumb traced circles on her hand, and that his request showed exactly why his company is failing. Naomi nodded, grateful Caleb understood her emotions without needing explanation. Let's not waste our evening on him, she said. Caleb smiled, drawing her closer. I'd much rather talk about this weekend. My lake house is ready. I'm thinking a private getaway before the holiday rush. The lake house was Caleb's sanctuary, a modernist retreat nestled in the woods, 2 hours from the city. Naomi had only visited once before, during a summer thunderstorm that had trapped them indoors for 2 days. The memory of those rain-soaked hours, explored in each other's arms, brought heat to her cheeks. I'd love that, she replied, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone that made Caleb's eyes darken. His kiss remained respectful of their public setting, but it carried a clear promise of passion to come. Should we head home? He murmured against her lips. Home. The word had taken on new meaning. 3 weeks ago, Naomi had moved into Caleb's penthouse, though she still kept her old apartment as a private studio. The transition had been surprisingly seamless. Caleb had cleared half his closet for her and encouraged her to rearrange furniture and make the space her own. Yes, she agreed, suddenly eager for the privacy that would let her show, not just tell him, how deeply her love had grown. The lake house welcomed them with sweeping views of autumn foliage reflected in still waters. Caleb had arranged everything. The kitchen stocked with their favorite foods, fresh flowers in the bedroom, the fireplace ready to be lit. After a walk along the shoreline, they returned as the sunset painted the sky in spectacular hues of orange and pink. Caleb opened wine while Naomi prepared a simple dinner, the two of them moving around the space with the easy synchronicity of partners who had learned each other's rhythms. I've been thinking, Naomi said as they lingered over dessert, the fire casting a warm glow across the sleek living space. "About my birthday next year." Caleb's expression softened. He knew the date still carried painful memories. Her birthday had once shared meaning with what would have been her second wedding anniversary with Christopher, a date now tied to public humiliation. "What about it?" he asked gently. "I want to reclaim it, make new memories." She reached for his hand. "I want us to get married on my birthday." Surprise and pleasure crossed Caleb's face. "Are you sure? We could choose any date." "I'm sure," Naomi said firmly. "I don't want that day to belong to pain anymore. I want it to represent our beginning, not my ending with Christopher." Caleb rose, pulling her into his arms with sudden emotion. "Naomi Green," he murmured into her hair, "you continue to astonish me with your courage." She looked up at him, her eyes sparkling. "Is that a yes?" "It's 1,000 times yes," he replied, before capturing her lips in a kiss that deepened quickly from tender to hungry. Naomi pressed close, her body instinctively responding to the familiar, exhilarating feel of him. Unlike her relationship with Christopher, which had grown cold and one-sided, intimacy with Caleb was a revelation, each encounter layered with connection and care. His hand slid down her back, drawing her hips against his. "Bedroom?" he suggested, voice thick with desire. "Too far," she whispered, already undoing the buttons of his shirt as she guided him to the plush rug in front of the fireplace. Caleb chuckled, following her lead without resistance. This was another aspect of their relationship that stood in contrast to her past, an equal give and take, mutual discovery, each completely attuned to the other's pleasure. Later, wrapped in a throw in front of the glowing embers, Naomi rested her head on Caleb's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Happy?" he asked, fingers tracing lazy lines along her spine. "Completely," she replied truthfully. After a quiet moment, she added, "I never thought I'd feel this way again. After that night, I was sure something inside me had died." Caleb shifted to look at her, his expression serious. "Nothing about you died that night, Naomi. You were wounded, yes, but what makes you extraordinary is how you turned those wounds into strength and compassion." His words touched something deep inside her. Her journey from heartbreak to healing had changed her, not in the way Christopher intended. Where he tried to diminish her, she had expanded. Where he tried to isolate her, she had forged deeper connection. "I love you," she said simply. The words still carried newness between them, and therefore weight. "Not because you rescued me, but because you saw me clearly when I couldn't see myself." Caleb kissed her, gentle, reverent. "And I love you, Naomi Green, soon to be Monroe, for exactly who you are. Brilliant, resilient, and absolutely irreplaceable." As moonlight spilled through the windows, painting silver across their intertwined bodies, Naomi felt the last ghosts of her past let go. Before her stretched a future bright with promise, a life built on respect, vision, and a love tested by fire and found unbreakable. Shadows from the past. The winter sun poured through the penthouse windows as Naomi reviewed fabric samples for their wedding, now only 4 months away. She would marry Caleb on her birthday, transforming a date once tied to betrayal into one of celebration. The thought filled her with triumphant joy. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, she would let it go to voicemail, but with wedding planning in full swing, she answered, just in case it was a vendor. "Naomi Green," she answered, her tone professional. There was a moment of silence. Then a voice she hadn't heard in months responded. "Naomi." Not Christopher. A woman's voice. "Who is this?" Naomi asked, though something in the voice struck a chord. "It's Catherine Bellamy." Naomi's grip tightened on the phone. Catherine, Christopher's mother. The elegant, reserved woman who had always kept Naomi at a polite distance during her marriage. "Mrs. Bellamy," Naomi acknowledged, keeping her tone even. "This is unexpected." "I know," Catherine replied, her voice holding unfamiliar hesitation. "I wouldn't have called, but there are things you should know. Things about Christopher." Naomi closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. "With all due respect, Mrs. Bellamy, your son and I are divorced. His concerns are no longer mine." "He's planning something," Catherine continued, ignoring Naomi's dismissal. "Something to disrupt your wedding. I overheard him on the phone with his attorney, discussing ways to delay your divorce settlement, possibly even challenge the finality of the divorce itself." Cold unease seeped through Naomi's veins. The divorce had been finalized months ago, but Christopher had resources and connections that could still create complications. "Why are you telling me this?" Naomi asked, suspicious of this unexpected alliance. Catherine's sigh carried across the line. "Because what he did to you that night was unforgivable. Because I raised him better than that." A pause. "And because I found out what he made you sell to buy that watch." Naomi's free hand moved instinctively to her mother's necklace, the only heirloom she had left. "Your mother's land," Catherine continued softly. "I remember how you spoke about it during our first family dinner, how she planned to build her dream home there someday, how you used to picnic under the willow tree." Tears pricked Naomi's eyes. She hadn't realized Catherine had been listening, or remembered those details. "I lost my own mother young," Catherine added, her voice growing stronger. "I know what those connections mean, what Christopher did, forcing you to sacrifice that legacy, then throwing it back in your face. That was cruelty beyond comprehension." Naomi sank onto the sofa, absorbing the unexpected revelation. "I appreciate the warning, Mrs. Bellamy." Catherine, the older woman, corrected gently. "And there's more. I believe he's been having you followed. I found receipts from a private investigator in his study during a visit last week." A chill ran down Naomi's spine. She had occasionally felt watched over the past few weeks, but dismissed it as paranoia. "Why would he do that?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "Information is power," Catherine said simply. "And Christopher has always needed to feel powerful, especially when he feels threatened." "I'm not a threat to him," Naomi protested. "Your happiness is," Catherine countered. "Your success with Caleb Monroe, your rising profile in the design world, all of it contradicts the story he's built in his head, the one where you're nothing without him." After promising to send any additional information she might uncover, Catherine ended the call, leaving Naomi staring at her phone in stunned silence. She was still sitting there when Caleb arrived home 30 minutes later, his smile fading instantly as he took in her expression. "What's happened?" he asked, setting aside his briefcase and joining her on the sofa. Naomi explained Catherine's unexpected call, the warnings about Christopher's surveillance and legal maneuvering. As she spoke, Caleb's expression darkened, but he listened quietly, not interrupting. "I should have anticipated this," he said at last, frustration edging his voice. "Christopher's type doesn't surrender control easily." "What does he hope to gain?" Naomi asked. "The divorce is final. I've moved on." "But you're happier," Caleb pointed out, taking her hand. "More successful, more visible. Your hotel project made the design magazines last month. Meanwhile, his company's in trouble after the expose on his lending practices." Catherine had been right. Since their engagement, Naomi had received an influx of high-profile commissions, thanks in part to her association with Caleb, but increasingly because of her growing reputation. In contrast, Christopher's business faced setbacks and investor retreat. "Catherine mentioned something else," Naomi said slowly. "She thinks he might have photos or something he plans to use to embarrass us publicly." Caleb's jaw tightened, though his voice remained even. "What kind of photos?" "I don't know," Naomi admitted. "But if he's had me followed." She didn't need to finish. Their relationship had grown more intimate, and though they were discreet, moments of closeness, a kiss in the elevator, a private embrace, could have been captured by someone determined enough. "I won't have you looking over your shoulder," Caleb said, an edge of steel in his tone. "This ends now." He stood and began pacing, a rare habit that Naomi recognized as a sign of deep agitation. "I've been patient with Christopher's petty sabotage, for your sake. I let my legal team handle things quietly because you wanted a clean break, without more drama. But surveillance? Threatening our wedding? That crosses a line." Naomi watched him, seeing a side of Caleb she rarely glimpsed. Not just the protector, but the strategist, the builder of empires capable of precision and power. He had been holding himself back out of respect for her. "What are you suggesting?" she asked, both uneasy and intrigued. Caleb sat beside her again, taking her hands in his. "Christopher needs to learn that actions have consequences. His company is over-leveraged. Investor confidence is shaky. Several of his projects are under review. We have the opportunity to act ethically, legally, strategically." "You want to destroy him professionally," Naomi said. "Not as an accusation, but as recognition." "I want justice," Caleb clarified. Not revenge, not sabotage, but accountability for what he's done to you, to others. He outlined a strategy using legitimate business methods. Shell corporations acquiring stakes in Christopher's failing company, slowly gaining leverage. From there, they could intervene or force change from within. Your insight would be invaluable, Caleb added. You know his blind spots, his emotional tics, his weaknesses. No financial report shows those. Naomi considered carefully. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about stooping to Christopher's level. It was about justice, strategy, and protection, and potentially saving employees and clients from further fallout. I never wanted to think about Christopher again, Naomi admitted. But he refuses to let us move forward. Maybe this is the only language he understands. Caleb studied her face intently. We do this together or not at all, he said firmly. And we set boundaries. This can't consume our lives or our relationship. We have a wedding to plan, projects to complete, a future to build. Naomi nodded, appreciating his clarity. 2 hours each week, she suggested. No more. Agreed. Their kiss sealed the pact, a different kind of partnership forming beside the personal and professional bonds they had already built. When they pulled apart, Naomi noticed something in Caleb's eyes she hadn't expected. A flicker of uncertainty. What is it? She asked gently. Caleb hesitated, unusual for a man so decisive. I want you to be sure this is what you want, that I'm not pushing you into something that contradicts your values. The vulnerability in his voice touched Naomi deeply. Even now, as they planned how to protect what they had built, Caleb was still prioritizing her autonomy, her moral compass. I believe in compassion, she said thoughtfully, but I also believe in justice, in boundaries, in protecting what matters. She cupped his face in her hands. This isn't about becoming like Christopher. It's about standing firmly in our own power. Relief softened Caleb's features. That's exactly it. Not vengeance, but refusing to be victimized. Something shifted between them in that moment. A deepening of understanding, a recognition of shared principles. Naomi had worried that confronting Christopher might drag them into darkness, but instead, she felt free. There was liberation in acknowledging that sometimes justice required action, not just dignified endurance. There's something else, Caleb said, his expression turning serious again. While we deal with Christopher's threats, I want to pursue another project. What kind of project? Finding your mother's land. Naomi stared at him, her heart stuttering. The developer broke ground months ago. It's gone, Caleb. Maybe, he conceded. But property transactions leave paper trails. Developments can be delayed or modified. At minimum, we might be able to preserve something. The willow tree, perhaps, or a corner of the property. Tears welled in Naomi's eyes at his understanding of what truly mattered to her. Not revenge, but reclamation. The connection to her mother. The land that held her most precious memories. You would do that? She whispered. In a heartbeat, Caleb replied, his voice rough. Not to erase what happened, but to restore something precious that was taken from you. Naomi kissed him, pouring into that moment all the emotion she couldn't express in words. This gesture encapsulated everything that made Caleb extraordinary. His ability to see what mattered most, and his quiet, steady commitment to healing, not just fighting. As moonlight filtered through the windows, Naomi's last thought before falling asleep wasn't of Christopher's threats. It was the profound difference between the two men who had shaped her recent past. One who exploited her vulnerabilities, and one who honored them as sacred trust. Chapter 8. The strategic revenge. 6 weeks into their carefully orchestrated plan, Naomi and Caleb sat in his home office, reviewing financial reports. Outside, a soft spring rain tapped against the tall windows, a calming rhythm to their focused silence. Summit Ventures has acquired 18% of Bellamy Capital stock, Caleb noted, highlighting figures on his tablet. Combined with Coastal's position, we now control 27%. Naomi nodded, still amazed at how cleanly they had kept Caleb's involvement hidden. Both Summit and Coastal were legitimate investment entities within his larger portfolio, their steady purchases appearing like ordinary market behavior rather than a deliberate, strategic campaign. What's our target threshold? She asked, reviewing the data with increasing confidence. These weekly sessions had taught her more about corporate finance than she ever learned during her entire marriage to Christopher. 40% would give us effective control, Caleb explained. Given how distributed the remaining shares are, if the price keeps falling, we'll reach that in 3 weeks. And the price was falling. Steadily, inexorably. Christopher's attempts to lure new investors had floundered. 3 senior executives had resigned in a single week, citing ethical concerns. Naomi knew it wasn't coincidence. She had identified those 3 as decent professionals stuck in a toxic system. Caleb had arranged quiet meetings, offering them positions in his subsidiaries, contingent upon their voluntary exit from Bellamy Capital, with their integrity intact. Brighton Financial submitted their withdrawal notice yesterday, Naomi added, referring to one of Christopher's last major investors. Their board was particularly concerned about the discrepancies I found in the Elmwood project. Caleb's smile was one of admiration. Your insight's been invaluable. No external audit would have caught that. Naomi felt a mix of emotion. During her marriage, Christopher had dismissed her questions about his business as cute, using her social network to advance his own goals. But now, the years she'd spent quietly observing, taking mental notes, had become powerful tools. She knew the projects he had misrepresented, the investors he'd charmed under false pretenses, the numbers that were polished just enough to deceive. It feels strange, she said quietly. I never wanted to think about Christopher again, Naomi admitted. But he refuses to let us move forward. Maybe this is the only language he understands. Caleb set aside his tablet, giving her his full attention. Second thoughts? No, she said firmly, just reflecting on the irony. He never thought I was paying attention, never valued my intelligence. Now, those same qualities he dismissed are helping hold him accountable. Rising from her chair, Naomi moved to the rain-streaked window. I received another message from him today. More threats, more manipulated photos. He's getting desperate. Caleb came to stand behind her, his hands gently massaging the tension from her shoulders. Has he realized what's happening yet? I don't think so. His ego won't let him see the pattern. She leaned back against Caleb's chest, drawing strength from his steady presence. He believes his company's issues are due to market forces and disloyal employees, not a coordinated strategy. Caleb's lips brushed the spot just below her ear. The next phase begins tomorrow. Are you ready? Naomi turned in his arms, searching his face. The next phase meant moving beyond defense toward active dismantling of Christopher's professional facade. I'm ready. Their kiss carried the intensity that had come to define their relationship since they decided to seek justice together. Passion fused with shared purpose, desire deepened by mutual respect. Naomi had never known anything like it. This blend of emotional and intellectual connection. We've got 1 more hour blocked for strategy, Caleb murmured against her lips, his hands already slipping at the buttons of her blouse. I suggest we use it more creatively. Naomi laughed, already pulling at his shirt. A strategic pivot. His smile was both tender and wickedly suggestive as he lifted her onto the desk, financial reports scattering as he stepped between her thighs. All work and no play makes for poor strategic thinking. Later, tangled together on the office sofa, Naomi marveled at how different intimacy was with Caleb. In her marriage to Christopher, sex had become transactional, a means of asserting control. With Caleb, it was connection. Mutual, unforced, joyful. You're thinking very loudly, Caleb observed, tracing slow patterns along her bare shoulder. Naomi smiled and kissed his chest. Just appreciating the present, letting go of the past. His arms tightened around her. Speaking of the present, there's something I've been meaning to show you. Reluctantly, Caleb slipped away to retrieve his tablet, returning to the sofa with Naomi curled beside him. He opened a secure folder and handed it to her. What am I looking at? She asked, scrolling through what appeared to be property records. Your mother's land, Caleb said softly. I've been negotiating with the developer who bought it, after you sold it, for Christopher's watch. Naomi's breath caught. Though she had made peace with the loss, the memory still stirred deep emotion. The development stalled due to permitting issues, Caleb continued. They're willing to sell the parcel back, at a premium, of course, but it's within reach. Tears welled in Naomi's eyes as she stared at the documents. You would do that? In a heartbeat, Caleb said, his voice thick, not to erase what happened, but to restore something precious that was taken from you. Naomi kissed him, her emotions too vast for words. This gesture captured everything she loved about him, his understanding of what mattered most, his commitment to healing, not just correcting wrongs. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb brushed a tear from her cheek. "Is that a yes to pursuing this?" "Yes," Naomi whispered, "but not just for me, for us. A place we could build something together, something with roots in my past, but facing our future." The tenderness in Caleb's eyes made her heart ache with love. "I was hoping you'd say that." Their second lovemaking was slower, more intimate, an expression of the emotional territory they'd just traversed. And when the rain outside turned rhythmic against the windows, they returned to their planning with renewed focus. "Tomorrow," Caleb said, sketching out next steps, "Sterling Bank will initiate a review of Christopher's loans, citing volatility in the market. Simultaneously, my legal team will file the trademark complaints over the Crestwood development name." Naomi nodded, adding, "And I'll meet with Nora Bennett from the Business Journal. She's investigating predatory lending, and I think she'd be very interested in those client letters." Their plan was comprehensive, but ethical. No fabricated evidence, no illegal maneuvering. Just strategy, applied pressure to an already flawed structure. The aim wasn't revenge, but full accountability. 3 more weeks, Caleb estimated, studying the timeline. Then we'll have controlling interest, and we can call for a full board review. Naomi's phone chimed with an alert. She glanced at the screen and frowned, showing it to Caleb. "Christopher Bellamy is getting the Entrepreneurial Excellence Award at next month's Commerce Association Gala. He's still got friends in high places," she noted. Caleb's expression shifted, calculating, sharp. That gala would be the perfect setting for the final phase. "What are you thinking?" "A public revelation," he said, with absolute precision. "No collateral damage, no harm to innocent employees or valid ventures." He took her hand, his gaze steady. "This isn't about humiliating him the way he humiliated you, Naomi. It's about exposing years of damage to clients, staff, and investors. It's about accountability." Naomi nodded, once again grateful for the ethical line Caleb always honored. "The gala's exactly 1 month before our wedding," she said, thoughtful. "Perfect timing to close that chapter completely." Caleb brought her hand to his lips and kissed her engagement ring. "And then we focus only on our future," he whispered. "No more looking back." As they finalized their strategy for the weeks ahead, Naomi felt the stirrings of closure. The past, once an open wound, now becoming a clean scar. And ahead of her, nothing but light. Naomi felt a profound sense of empowerment. This wasn't the bitter vengeance of a wounded heart, but the measured response of a woman who had found her strength and a partner who valued it. Christopher had tried to break her with public humiliation. Instead, he had inadvertently set in motion the chain of events that led her to discover her truest self and deepest love. There was a poetic justice in that. One that no strategic plan could have orchestrated, but one Naomi treasured more than anything else. Justice served. The Commerce Association Gala had transformed the grand ballroom of the Crestwood Hotel into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over elaborately set tables as the city's business elite mingled with polished charm. Naomi stood at the entrance, her hand resting confidently in Caleb's arm, acutely aware of the symmetry. Almost 1 year ago, she had entered a different ballroom on an anniversary night that ended in disaster. Tonight, she returned on her terms. She wore deep indigo instead of scarlet. Her natural curls were swept into an elegant updo adorned with sapphire pins, a gift from Caleb to mark 3 months until their wedding. "Ready?" Caleb asked, his eyes full of both admiration and concern. Naomi nodded, drawing strength from his steady presence and from everything they had accomplished together. Over the past several months, they had quietly acquired 42% of Bellamy Capital's stock through multiple holdings, strategically placed allies on the board, and compiled irrefutable documentation of Christopher's questionable practices. Tonight would be the culmination. As they made their way through the crowd, Naomi noticed the glances that followed them. Curious, speculative, their relationship had become a subject of business gossip. The designer who rose from scandal to partner with one of the city's most respected developers. Some whispered opportunism. Others murmured fairy tale redemption. None of them knew the truth. Naomi Green, a familiar voice, interrupted her thoughts. "Didn't expect to see you here." Christopher stood before them, champagne flute in hand, his tuxedo immaculate. But Naomi immediately noticed the tension in his eyes, the strain behind his carefully curated smile. "Christopher," she greeted calmly, "congratulations on your award." His eyes flicked over to Caleb with thinly veiled contempt before returning to her. "Enjoying the spotlight, I see, though I wonder how long Mr. Monroe's interest will last once the novelty fades." Caleb's hand moved gently to the small of Naomi's back, grounding her. He said nothing, per their plan, allowing Naomi to respond first. "I've learned the difference between genuine partnership and exploitation, Christopher," she said evenly. "It's been enlightening." Something sharp flashed in his gaze. "Enlightening enough to understand how reputation works in our world?" he said coldly. "I still have those photos we discussed." Caleb spoke then, his tone pleasant but edged with steel. "Mr. Bellamy, I'd strongly advise you to reconsider any plans involving defamation or digital manipulation. The legal fallout would be extensive." Christopher sneered. "Still hiding behind your billionaire boyfriend, Naomi? Some things never change." Naomi smiled serenely. The calm in her expression unsettled him far more than anger ever could. "Actually, Christopher, everything has changed. Enjoy your award." As they walked away, Caleb leaned close and murmured, "Perfectly handled. Are you all right?" "Better than all right," Naomi replied, truthfully. "He has no power over me anymore." Their table was near the front, strategically placed to offer a full view of both the stage and Christopher's table across the room. Dinner passed, then the preliminary speeches. Naomi could feel the tension building like the final bars of an overture. Then the association president stepped to the podium to present the Entrepreneurial Excellence Award. "Before we honor tonight's recipient," he said, "we have a special announcement from Caleb Monroe of Monroe Sustainable Development." "Mr. Monroe?" Christopher's head jerked up, confusion darkening his expression, as Caleb rose from his chair and strode confidently to the stage. This moment had not been advertised, arranged at the last minute thanks to Caleb's generous donation to the association's scholarship fund. "Thank you," Caleb began, his voice calm, authoritative. "As many of you know, our firm is committed to ethical development that benefits both communities and investors." He paused, allowing the room to settle. "Tonight, I'm pleased to announce our latest acquisition." The presentation screens lit up on either side of the stage, displaying Bellamy Capital's logo. "As of market close today," Caleb continued, "Monroe Sustainable Development has acquired controlling interest in Bellamy Capital." Murmurs erupted throughout the room. Naomi watched Christopher's face lose all color as realization dawned. Not only had he lost control of his company, Caleb was publicly initiating a corporate restructuring that would expose his practices to scrutiny. "We look forward to integrating Bellamy Capital's assets into our ethical business framework," Caleb continued. "As part of our due diligence, several projects have been flagged for immediate compliance reviews." The screen shifted to documentation from the Elmwood development. One Naomi had known for months was riddled with misrepresented environmental studies. "Transparency is key to rebuilding investor confidence," Caleb said, outlining planned steps for remediation. It wasn't an accusation, not directly, but no one in the room missed the message. As Caleb returned to the table amid applause, Naomi could see Christopher rising from his seat across the room, fury barely contained in his stiff posture. "You orchestrated this," Christopher hissed, looming over their table. "You manipulated the market to seize my company." Caleb regarded him calmly. "We made legitimate investments in an undervalued company with promising assets, standard business practice." "This is a personal vendetta," Christopher insisted, his voice rising enough to attract attention from surrounding tables. Naomi rose, facing him directly. "No, Christopher. This is accountability, something you've managed to avoid for far too long." From her evening bag, she retrieved a small velvet box. "I believe this belongs to you," she said, opening it to reveal the sapphire watch, the very object that had catalyzed their original fracture. "I don't want that," he said dismissively. "Neither do I," Naomi replied. "It represents everything wrong with our relationship, surface beauty hiding hollow values." She placed the box on the table between them. "Consider it severance from our past." "I'm keeping my mother's land, though." Christopher's expression twisted into confusion. "That land was sold, Purchased again at market value by my firm, Caleb interjected smoothly. Understanding spread across Christopher's face, slowly and painfully. This wasn't just a corporate takeover. It was the recovery of what he had forced Naomi to sacrifice. You won't get away with this, he threatened, his composure fraying. I've got friends on the Commerce Commission. The regulatory board will receive full documentation of the Elmwood environmental reports tomorrow. Naomi interrupted, her voice even. Along with the Bayview loan restructurings, unless, of course, you'd prefer to address those issues internally during the transition. Christopher stared at her, momentarily speechless at her command of his most vulnerable business data. You were right about one thing, Christopher, Naomi said quietly. I was paying attention during our marriage. Just not to the things you thought mattered. While you focused on my appearance and social capital, I was watching business practices that should never have been allowed to continue. The association president approached, sensing tension. Everything all right here? Perfectly fine, Caleb said smoothly. Mr. Bellamy was just congratulating us on the acquisition. Excellent, the president said cheerfully. Christopher, we're ready for your award presentation now. Trapped by decorum, Christopher had no choice but to follow the president toward the stage. As he walked away, he glanced back once, his expression a volatile mix of rage and rising fear. He knows, Naomi murmured as she and Caleb returned to their seats. Yes, Caleb agreed, and more importantly, he knows we know. Tomorrow's board meeting will decide whether he cooperates or faces public exposure. They watched as Christopher accepted his award, his smile brittle, his speech noticeably shorter than planned. The irony wasn't lost on Naomi. Receiving an excellence award minutes after losing his company, brought down by the same ethical failures he once flaunted. After the gala concluded, Caleb led Naomi to the terrace overlooking the city. The spring air was warm, fragrant with the scent of blooming flowers from the hotel garden below. How do you feel? He asked gently, studying her under the soft city lights. Naomi thought about it carefully. Complete, she said finally. Not because of what happened to him, but because I closed that chapter on my terms. Caleb smiled, drawing her into his arms. You were incredible tonight. Your strength keeps astonishing me. It was our strategy, she reminded him, resting her hands against his chest. Our justice. True, he said. But seeing you stand there completely beyond his reach, that was all Naomi Green, the woman I fall more in love with every single day. Their kiss beneath the stars was not one of triumph over an enemy, but a celebration of healing and clarity. Naomi had rewritten her story, not by striking back, but by rising above. Take me home, she whispered against his lips. We've got a wedding to plan, and a future to build. Caleb's grin held every promise she would ever need. Home it is, though maybe with a quick detour. What kind of detour? Naomi asked, catching the glint in his eyes. I thought we could drive by your mother's land, he said, under the moonlight, so you can start imagining what we'll create there, together. Naomi's heart swelled. He understood, without needing to be told. That sounds perfect. As they left the gala hand in hand, Naomi looked back once at the ballroom, where Christopher now stood alone, finally feeling the weight of his choices. She didn't feel victory, just certainty, that the scales had finally balanced. Chapter 10. The Ultimate Reckoning. Exactly 1 year after Naomi's public collapse, the grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel had once again been transformed. This time, not for an anniversary, but for a wedding. Cascades of white lilies and blue delphiniums lined the space. Crystal and silver gleamed on every table. A wedding, a reclamation. Naomi finally taking back the date that had once crushed her. In the bridal suite, Talia fastened the last pearl button on Naomi's gown. A custom design blending timeless elegance with modern structure, much like the woman who wore it. Nervous? Talia asked, standing back to admire the full effect. Naomi shook her head, studying her reflection. The woman looking back bore no resemblance to the one who had collapsed in tears here a year ago. Her eyes held clarity, her smile unforced. Not nervous, she said. Just complete. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Caleb's 16-year-old sister, Laya, peeked in, glowing in her bridesmaid dress. He's here, she whispered with a grin. Right on schedule. Naomi turned, confused. Caleb's not supposed to see me before the ceremony. Not Caleb, Laya said, her expression sobering. Christopher. He just arrived. exactly as Naomi had predicted. Resentment festered. 2 weeks ago, through carefully placed channels, word of Naomi and Caleb's wedding, its date and venue, had reached Christopher. The invitation had never been sent. But Naomi had known his wounded pride would bring him today. Unable to resist witnessing her happiness, perhaps even fantasizing about disrupting it. "Is everything in place?" she asked. Laya nodded. "Security's been briefed. Media is positioned exactly where you said." Talia checked her watch. Jonas should be approaching him now. Jonas, Caleb's head of security, had detailed instructions, not to eject Christopher immediately, but to let the day unfold according to the script Naomi and Caleb had written. Their final act of justice. "I need a moment," Naomi said, squeezing Talia's hand in gratitude. Once alone, Naomi moved to the window overlooking the hotel's entrance courtyard. From there, she saw Jonas approaching Christopher, who stood near the edge of arriving guests. Their conversation appeared cordial, Christopher's stance shifting subtly from arrogance to confusion as Jonas gestured toward a side entrance. Her phone chimed. "Our guest has arrived, proceeding as planned. I love you beyond measure." Naomi smiled and typed back, "See you at the altar. I'll be the one in white." At the mirror, she took one last look. The compass necklace Caleb had given her during his first real proposal lay at her collarbone, part of her wedding ensemble. North still pointed north. As he'd said, a constant in a world of change. A knock. Her father entered, proud and misty-eyed. "It's time, sweetheart. Ready to start your new beginning?" Naomi took a long, calming breath. "More than ready." The ceremony was flawless. Naomi walked the aisle toward Caleb, whose expression of reverence and awe nearly brought her to tears. Their vows, composed in the quiet of home, spoke of respect, resilience, and a love forged in fire. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss drew warm applause, equal parts celebration and affirmation. As they turned toward their guests, Naomi caught a discreet movement at the rear of the ballroom. Jonas had guided Christopher to a spot near the back, exactly as planned. Champagne flowed. The reception bloomed into laughter and warmth. An hour in, Caleb gave a subtle nod to the conductor. The music paused, Naomi's hand in his. He led her to the stage where a microphone and several philanthropic leaders waited. "Friends and family," Caleb began, voice steady and rich. "Naomi and I thank you for being with us today, for making this a true communion of hearts." His eyes found hers. She nodded. "This date carries deep meaning. 1 year ago, Naomi endured an experience that could have broken anyone. Instead, she turned pain into purpose." At the back, Christopher shifted uncomfortably. Guests, oblivious to his presence, focused on the beaming couple. "And so," Caleb continued, "we're honored to announce the creation of the Horizon Initiative, a foundation supporting survivors of emotional and financial abuse." One of the benefactors stepped forward and presented Naomi with a ceremonial check. Photographers captured every frame, the symbolism, the triumph. Naomi took the microphone. Calm, poised. "Horizon Haven isn't just the name of our development," she said. "It symbolizes the journey many face when leaving toxic relationships." Her gaze flicked toward Christopher, whose stunned face was visible only to her, and then returned to the room. "The foundation will offer housing, legal aid, and business mentorship. Because sometimes the most powerful lesson from pain is learning how to help others heal." Applause thundered as Naomi and Caleb unveiled the foundation's logo. A rising horizon formed by outstretched arms. Photographers surged, securing tomorrow's headlines. Back on the floor, Naomi saw Jonas quietly escorting Christopher toward the exit. Their plan had worked. He had seen her joy, witnessed her transformation, and had no choice but to walk away, watching what he'd once tried to destroy become something unshakable. Mission accomplished. Caleb whispered as they moved to the dance floor. "Perfectly," Naomi replied. "Did you see his face?" "Absolutely priceless." Caleb's laugh was low and full of pride. "Remind me never to challenge you, Mrs. Monroe. Your tactical mind is formidable." "I prefer to use my powers for good," she said, grinning. "Though I make exceptions for justice." As the music swelled around them, Caleb's expression grew tender but serious. "Are you happy, Naomi? Truly?" The question touched her deeply. Here was a man who, even in triumph, cared more about her authentic joy than any symbolic victory. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. "Today wasn't about Christopher. It was about us, reclaiming this day completely." And so we have, Caleb agreed, his arms tightening around her waist as he spun her effortlessly, the silk of her gown rippling like a wave. The past, he said softly, is finally just the past. Later, as their reception bloomed with dancing and joy, Caleb quietly guided Naomi away to a private terrace overlooking the city's skyline. A small table awaited them with 2 flutes of champagne and a velvet box. "One final wedding gift," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate sapphire bracelet, the stone set in a pattern mirroring the constellation from the night of his first true proposal, the night he gave her the compass. "It's exquisite," Naomi whispered as he fastened it gently around her wrist. "Like its owner," Caleb replied, echoing the words he'd once spoken on the rooftop of the museum. This time, Naomi didn't protest the compliment. Beneath the same stars that had once witnessed their tentative beginning, Caleb drew his wife into his arms, their kiss deepening with the familiar passion they had cultivated, and the wonder of what now lay ahead as husband and wife. "We should return to our guests," Naomi murmured, though her body remained pressed against his. "They won't miss us for a few minutes," Caleb countered, his fingers tracing the elegant lace down her back. "I've waited all day to have you to myself, if only for a moment." His touch stirred the desire they had nurtured over months of love, understanding, and shared healing. Naomi responded with a kiss that promised fulfillment, later, when they would finally retreat to the suite awaiting them upstairs. "Patient as always," she teased, straightening his bow tie with a knowing smile. "For you, always," Caleb said, kissing her palm, "though tonight may stretch the limits of that patience." Their laughter, warm and unguarded, danced into the night as they returned hand in hand to their guests, a perfect blend of joy and serenity, desire and peace, their past now reconciled, their future wide open. 1 year later, Naomi stood on the broad porch of the home she and Caleb had built on her mother's land. One hand rested over her round belly, the other shielding her eyes as she watched Caleb arranging chairs beneath the pergola that faced a lush garden, just as her mother had once dreamed. The Horizon Initiative had flourished beyond their imagination, already transforming the lives of dozens of survivors. Naomi's design firm had expanded, now including a mentorship program for young women entering the creative field. Caleb's sustainable development company continued to evolve, transforming cities into inclusive, livable communities for all. As for Christopher, he had tried to rebuild his career in another city, but his reputation followed him. The last Naomi had heard, he was in middle management at a boutique firm. Not destroyed, but finally contained, by the very consequences he had never believed would apply to him. "What are you thinking about, love?" Caleb asked, stepping beside her and sliding an arm around her shoulders, his hand settling over hers, now resting on the subtle movements of their daughter within. Naomi leaned into his embrace, feeling the soft flutter of a kick beneath their palms. "Journeys," she said. "How the worst night of my life led to the best years of it." Caleb kissed her temple gently. "Life has a way of balancing the books." "It does," Naomi agreed, then added with a smirk, "though sometimes it needs a little strategic assistance." Caleb's warm laugh rumbled through her. "Remind me to warn our daughter never to underestimate her mother." "Oh, I think you can teach her that," Naomi smiled. "I'll teach her how to build something beautiful from whatever raw materials life hands her." As the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the sky with strokes of gold and rose, they stood together in the home they had created, built on reclaimed ground. Two people who had found in each other the rarest kind of love, one that healed old wounds while planting roots for future joy. A love that recognized worth through scars and turned what was broken into something more radiant than either could have envisioned. Their story had begun in betrayal, but it would continue in resilience, redemption, and renaissance. A sapphire heart, once shattered, now reforged, not just whole again, but unbreakable. Dear friend, life, in its most merciless moments, often tests the shape of our soul. But as the Stoics remind us, what stands in the way becomes the way. Naomi's journey was not just one of heartbreak and healing. It was proof that even in ruin, beauty can be built. Her home, her marriage, her purpose, all rose from ashes not because fate was kind, but because she chose courage when bitterness beckoned. Let her story be a reminder. We are not defined by what breaks us, but by how we rebuild. wiser, stronger, and with deeper compassion. Sometimes, the life you were meant to live begins the moment you stop chasing the one you lost. If this story moved you, please consider liking, sharing it with someone who might need it today, and subscribing to join us for more stories of strength, love, and second chances.